All right, welcome everybody. Randy and I are looking forward to this week's episode of Mindset. We're going to talk about business, we're going to talk about mindset, and we're looking forward to sitting down with Michael Zwick. Michael, welcome to the show. Michael brands himself as a treasure hunter, finding money where you least expect it. He is a private investigator, also an attorney, owner and president of Assets International. Well, you're our first on this show. You're our first private investigator / detective. So I think when you tell people you're a private investigator, they probably get a little nervous, that you've done like some research on them or something of that nature. But you have a pretty interesting business model where and I'm going to let you define it, where, again, you just find money for people, right? I mean, so you are a licensed private investigator. You've been around since 2001, and you locate missing heirs and reunite owners around the world with their assets. So how does one, A, get into that, and B, do that?
Well, I can tell you, first of all, great to be here. Just to clarify, while I do wear a lot of T-shirts, especially these days, I don't wear Hawaiian shirts like Magnum. I do a tiger hat, though.
Okay.
So anyways, I can tell you how I got into the business. I used to practice law, and back about 19 years ago, if an old friend had reached out to me and says, I've come across this concept of money just sitting there in government treasuries and courts. I need someone with a legal background, the know-how, how to cut through the red tape and how to deal with probate. Can you help me out with that? So I joined doing that. I joined him and another guy who we had brought on, and we started doing it part-time. And then after all, started doing it full-time. And then a few years later, we started hiring employees. I kind of stumbled into it. It's how to basically get into it is you just have to know where to look where the money is, which there are government treasuries all over the place have money sitting there. And also requires some investigative skills, some knowledge of various legal areas, especially probate. So there are multifaceted areas. And obviously then the general business idea of knowing how to run a business, how to do sales and marketing and stuff like that.
So in effect, Michael, you're a super sleuth. In effect, you are the go-to person to find, or as Jonathan says, the treasure hunter. And, you have people, especially as an estate planning attorney, that sometimes don't know they're entitled to money. And my question to you is it the asset and then the person, or the person and then the asset? Which comes first? Much easier to answer than the chicken or the egg.
So great question. For a number of years, when it came to individuals, we just did find the money first, then find the people. And we also would, on behalf of large corporations, would proactively look for their money on a regular basis. So we represented a number of Fortune 100 companies, major universities, hospitals, and other nonprofits that they're so big that they're always going to have money slipping through the cracks that we find. Starting last year, we just started a new service where, on behalf of estates where someone has passed away, the exact situation where you just said, where someone says, I have this estate, I'm the executor, I'm the trustee, but I don't know where the decedent had his or her assets. Can you help me look for them? Just this morning, we got a phone call from a guy in Connecticut who's his father's first cousin in upstate New York passed away. He says, I know I'm the closest relative. I know about the house he lived in and some real estate he owned in West Virginia. But other than that, I don't know any of his assets. Can you find them? And the timing happens to be perfect because not only do we have this service, which is relatively new, we're actually launching a website where they will specifically deal with these types of cases called Inherit More. And we're hopefully launching that website within the next 24 hours or so. So the timing was actually perfect that he reached out to us.
That's great. So I have a question on, we're talking about mindset, and I just want to move it to a little bit of sales because sales, in sales and prospects, we're sitting here now, it's July 22nd. I think it's July 22nd. July 22nd. And, I think people are getting more into the swing of sales. There was a time when COVID started, people weren't really quote unquote selling. Things are starting to get back to kind of a little bit of business normalcy where people can actually feel like they're actually selling. And with selling, prospecting is something that usually needs to be done consistently, should be always a very tough thing to do, because you got to hunt. I mean, you really got to hunt, and you got to. And so, So my question for you is, how do you hunt, right? How do you really hunt? Somebody says to you, "Hey, my father's first cousin's sister's uncle's father is looking for things. Go find these assets." How do you even begin the hunt? And the reason I connected to sales is because sales is a hunt.
Right. So in terms of, are you talking about hunting down assets? Is that where you're?
Yeah. Like, how do you actually find what they're looking for?
Okay. So, so in terms of finding the assets, we'll do a thorough search through all of our different. First of all, we have a lot of sources that we get from, like I said, from government agencies. We're getting hundreds of lists of money that's just sitting there waiting for people. That's been a little bit slow down because, as you can imagine, a number of these government agencies just shut down or are working with skeleton crew, so they can only they don't see our requests for information as being top priority. And same thing with going to banks or insurance companies that will knock on the doors and say, "Hey, do you have money belonging to our clients?" So it's not really deadline oriented. If we already have the sale where the person has come to us or agreed they want us to do the work for them, it does more of a cash flow issue for us in that regard. But this whole thing has, in the beginning, did create a little bit of a hiccup in sales, where some people were just scared and they couldn't even contemplate dealing with anything new. If we were to call them and say, "We found money for you, we'd like to recover it for you," they'd say, like, "I can't even think about this." On the other hand, you have some people who actually were more receptive than usual. And we always say our biggest competition is not another company, it's skepticism. It's people saying, "Well, you're telling me you have money for me?"
Right.
No, that sounds too good to be true. So some people were actually able to put aside that skepticism because they were so scared that they said, "You know what? Let me hear more about this, about money coming to me, because I'm scared about what's happening."
And talk a little bit more about how you get through that, because I think on a weekly basis I'm getting fraudulent emails from PayPal. I'm getting fraudulent emails from banks. I'm getting spam calls literally probably 2 to 3 an hour. And so if somebody randomly called me and said, "Hey, give me your XYZ address or this because I have money for you," I would probably hang up on them.
So there are a few things we do. One is, before we call someone, we've actually done our homework. So we'll call them and say, "Hey, we know that you lived at so-and-so address," whatever. But the big thing is we let them know our credentials. We make sure they know we are a licensed and bonded private investigation agency. We have our A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. We have won other awards, and we direct them to our website so they can see we're real people. And they can look us up, like I said, look up our licenses. And when we mail something to them, it's coming with a very professional appearance. It's got usually a glossy reprint of an article with positive mention of us from the Washington Post to the Detroit News, so they can see we're actually a real thing. But the biggest thing is also we tell them, "Hey, you don't owe us a dime until you get the money in." And the contract it's very simple. The contract is very clear. That very clearly says you don't owe us a dime, including any expenses that we front, until you get your money. So I think that when they see that I think that really wins them over. And we say, "We don't want your credit card. We're not asking for any personal information at this time until you're convinced that we are legitimate."
Yeah, because I'd imagine you have a lot of naysayers and sort of the too good to be true crowd. So, mindset is so important, but at the same time, getting a believing audience is also. So, I share a story. I remember, years ago when I was a younger attorney, somebody mentioned they received a call about an inheritance, and they thought, at the end of the day, it wasn't true. but what they thought to be true, in fact, wasn't. And in fact, they started spending the money before they received it.
Right.
So
We see that.
you take what Jonathan mentioned about people getting all these scams throughout the world. I mean, every morning you wake up, there's another email. You have people that are rightfully owed money, and then you get Michael Zwick, who's a licensed and bonded private investigator, a lawyer, someone who knows what they're doing. I mean, you have somewhat of an uphill battle.
Right.
Share with us a story where you almost wanted to laugh at the fact that it was so true they found it to be false.
Right. So it's actually, I happened to have been looking at an old file today where we had a case where an attorney called us up and said, "Hey, my client passed away. He left $20,000 to a kid that he fostered, and the kid's probably about 40 years old now." So you're talking, and it wasn't the rarest name. So we actually tracked down who we thought the person was, but there were 2 or 3 people with that name around in the area. And I went to the person's house, and there's a guy sitting on the driveway, and I said, "Hey, are you so-and-so?" And he looks at me like, "What do you want to know?" So I explained, he says, "Well, I think he's sleeping right now." I said, "Okay." I kind of suspect, I saw the skepticism there. I said, "Okay, well, here's my card. Here's why I'm here. If you can please have him call me." And I literally hadn't even admitted back to my office, and my assistant calls me and says, "So-and-so's on the phone for you." He called back. That was him. He just was a little scared because, he's had people hounding him for collections or whatever. And soon thereafter, once we were able to establish that he was that foster child, he got his $20,000.
That's great.
So yeah, we have that all the time. People who don't believe us, who literally take 6 months, a year, or even longer from the first contact before they're finally comfortable signing with us and working with us.
Well, I think the work that you do is great because you're helping people, and you've uncovered I think like $80+ million for people. I think is the number that's on here.
The thing last I checked is over 110 million.
Yeah, 110 million. It's amazing. But I have a question for you. I have a question.
That's a few million between friends.
So Randy's one of the top estate attorneys in the country. I'll say maybe even the world, but let's stick to the country. And so what can somebody do? Randy, this is kind of a question for the two of you, right? So what can somebody do when they're creating their estate plan or updating their estate plan so this doesn't become an issue? Not that I want to put you out of business, Michael, as hunting, but There's got to be some synergy for people's mindset to start thinking, hey, like something is here, right? What got me into real estate, actually what got me into the final string of getting into real estate was long story short, a deal of my grandfather's came back to life that he talked about all the time 40 years ago. My grandfather passed away. 15, 20 years later, my brother gets a call. Hey, we have a question on this property. And so we thought something was going to come of it. It turned out to be nothing, but that led me to my brother and I calling a friend that actually got me into real estate. And so, how can somebody's mindset be when it starts with the estate attorney?
Yeah, now let me kick that answer off. I think it starts with guys like us in the trenches, and Michael, I think you'd agree that it's up to us as sort of the front and center people to gather as much information about the beneficiary as possible, including the relationship to the person, perhaps an address, a phone number, and so forth. Because now keep in mind that people do move, people pass, they leave probate estates, they fail to plan. And with that information, I believe it would make your job a lot easier, Michael. But in the absence of it, again, you go back to doing what you do so well.
Right. So yeah, I think the key for Randall and his clients, yes, is absolutely sit down and be as thorough as possible to identify not only the heirs but also the assets. And it's because estate planning documents, and Randy seen a lot more than I have, don't necessarily list all the assets. They just say what happens to the assets when someone passes away. So there's the important aspect of someone sitting down and documenting them. And I think, as any estate planning attorney will tell you, a lot of people are really uncomfortable discussing those things with their family. And I think there are people who are much more open about talking about their sex life on social media than they are about discussing with just their family what assets they own. So it is something that I actually wish would put us out of business, but I'm unfortunately not too concerned about it, because I think at this point, only half of American adults even have any sort of estate plan, and even those that do don't necessarily have a really good inventory of their assets.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. I want to thank you for that. I want to go back a little bit to something you said at the beginning of this conversation, which is you kind of fell into this piece of the business. You know, at this point, you started in 2001. You've been through a couple recessions at this point. You've been through a couple cycles in the market. And right now, kids are graduating college that the world looks completely different. And I think it would be inspiring to kind of hear how you just kind of surrendered and were open to just going with the flow of starting this new business. Even though it was back in 2001, because right now I think there's a lot of people who are thinking, A, do I want to stick with the company I'm with or start my own business? B, I just graduated college. I'm not really sure what to do. Maybe I'll take something that is my unique ability and start my own thing. And C, there's people out there who just have been hungry to start a side hustle for a while. And so just kind of talk a little bit about that, because you've shown that you can build a 20-year career in this. And so there's a lot of wisdom in that.
Well, thank you. So, you know, when I started this, it was a side hustle before anybody even knew the phrase side hustle. It was just something I did as a supplement to my legal practice. I can't say I was blowing it up. I had a nice little one-man operation. I was a single guy, so I was living, you know, pretty well, considering I had pretty much no expenses in my life other than my mortgage. But, you know, my partners also, they both actually were already married and had families, and were doing one was a school teacher, the other was a videographer. And like I said, for the first probably 2 years or so, we all just did it as a side thing. And then it got to the point where we said, okay, we think we have something here. And then we actually made it full time. And there's another 2 years after that, that we actually started hiring employees. So it wasn't this overnight thing that all of a sudden we opened the doors and next day we were rolling the money. It was very much a side thing to do. And I think that's the key. You know, there are a lot of things and we did this very much on a shoestring budget, because yes, we had to set up a little database so we could keep track of everything. And we all had, you know, internet and phone and whatever like that, but we really didn't have that much in terms of expenses. We were able to do this as a side thing without much expense. And then we tested it, and it was just the flywheel, as you know, Jim Collins talks about in his books, the flywheel that just kept going a little bit more and more, and all of a sudden we realized, like, hey, wait a minute, we got something here, and it's actually working. I
actually started rereading that book this morning. I mean, I've read it, I've listened to it, and it's a little red book called Flywheel, which is
I haven't read that. I've read the original. The Good.
Right. Well, the original Good Great is great.
Yeah. Okay.
But there is a little small book called Flywheel that just focuses on the flywheel and that concept, and just goes into a lot of detail. I highly recommend it.
I'll have to check that out.
I think the point of entrepreneurship, I mean, Warren Buffett said it best. I remember him saying it one time, or I read, that if you think being an entrepreneur is risky, try working 40 years for a company and living off Social Security.
Yeah.
So I truly believe that as a result of what we're experiencing and what we've experienced for the last 4 months, there are going to be a lot of people looking for, whether it begins as a side hustle, but something else. And, you know, your example, Michael, is, you know, again, the American story. You know, I know you started as a lawyer at a big law firm, a very reputable law firm, and to make that leap of faith, you know, obviously it's easier when you're single and unmarried than it is when you're married with obligations. But nonetheless, you had to make that leap of faith. You had to get on that flywheel. You had to do things day in and day out and realize that there's no elevator to success. You have to take the stairs one step at a time.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to wait. So I guess what words of wisdom and advice would you give that sort of person that might be on the sidelines listening today, that might want to do exactly what you did, not in the same space, but just to go out there and do it?
Right. Well, I when you said the Warren Buffett quote, it reminded me of a different quote, and I fully agree with it. There's another quote, I wish I could remember who said it, that says, entrepreneurs they like to roll the dice, but they like to roll loaded dice where they have some idea. So the idea is like, yeah, you're taking some chances as an entrepreneur, but figure out what you're doing first to figure out what you can leverage to your maximum benefit. So I think it's, like I said, especially nowadays with technology the way it is, and also the bar is lower in some regards in terms of having to go meet people. So you don't necessarily, I think for those who feel like that they have to go to a meeting in California just to seal that deal, I think the bar is so much lower. You could say like, no, people, even the top executives now are saying, no, let's do a phone call. I think back to right before COVID started, we're pretty close to sealing a deal with a major university to do their unclaimed property recovery for them. And I flew, it was a day trip, but I flew for literally a 15-minute meeting, which I did because 4 months ago that was a normal thing to do.
Yeah.
Now you don't need to do that. So I think there are ways I think there's a lot more acceptance of people working in their basements right now. So I think in some ways this actually benefits those the people are starting something in their garage or their basement, that people are going to cut them that slack.
Well, right, and you also have, I agree with what you're talking about, because you also have technology in place that was not here 10 years ago or during the 2008 crash. You have virtual assistants locally and all over the world, frankly, that people can utilize. And you can get best of class to do all the little things you need to for yourself, where you don't have to bring on full-time employees or even need an office.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to talk to you, though, about just to kind of layer into what we're talking about, because I'm a big believer in mentors asking for help in growing your brand. And so how have mentors helped you evolve your mindset and your business?
So I'm very, I'm not shy about asking someone for advice. Unfortunately, in our business, there's as much, for better or for worse, there's not much precedent to what we do. So we for the first 10 years, a motto around our offices, we're making up as we go along, because it's not like there are a lot of unclaimed property offices out there that we could learn from. But I thought back to when I was practicing law. Like I said, I was solo practitioner, mostly doing criminal law and bankruptcy. And I had those attorneys around who were much more experienced than I am or was. And they were really good about my calling them up and saying, hey, can I have some help? What can you tell me? What should I do in this case, or something like that? So, but it comes to general business stuff, I will try to identify someone who has dealt with an issue, even if it's not the same. I used to be a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a international organization for second stage business owners. And one of the prime aspects of it is what's called Forum, which is once a month you get together with your group of 8 or so people and you discuss whatever issues are going on. And by rule, you don't have any competition. No one's in the same field as you. But when it comes to, say, marketing or whatever, or building a business, or what to deal with a disgruntled employee, entrepreneurs have all been through that, in one way or another. So it's really a matter of finding out what experience that other people have had. So I really try to stay plugged into the entrepreneur community and reach out to people that might have dealt with the same thing. At the same time, I try to pay it forward, like was done for me when I was a young lawyer, to help out people, even in my field. Every so often I talk to a young guy in Kalamazoo who's just getting started as an unclaimed property finder, and he'll call me and I'll openly tell him, because maybe someday he will be true competition for me. Right now he's dealing in the much smaller stuff that we've kind of gotten beyond.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, and I'd imagine, you already answered the question, but that there is guesswork in your business. How impactful is social media in terms of, with all the websites and all the different apps we have in locating assets?
Social media is, it definitely helps in terms of getting the attention of people who are out there, attorneys or whoever who might have business for us, or from large corporations that might see us on LinkedIn, that see our activity. We don't really use, our legacy company doesn't use it so much. The new company that I said that we're launching today, I think will be much more social media heavy, because we're going to be interacting much more directly with consumers. And our old business, or legacy, but not a legacy business in terms of individuals, was much more, don't call us, we'll call you, because it was basically, if you were to call me and say, do I have money out there? I'd say, yeah, you might, but it's a trying to find needle in a haystack. Whereas if I found money and I said, oh, Jon Dwoskin's got $20,000, I'm going to call him. I'm not going to wait for him to call me. So there wasn't as much social media. Like I said, the new one, unfortunately, I think we're really proud of the website, and we're going to have a really great Facebook page for it. So that's, I guess my answer to your question is, we haven't used it much. We're about to embark on a whole new chapter that I think is going to be really exciting.
Well, that's great. That's really exciting, Michael. But before we move into a quick speed round, was there something, Randy, we had talked right before we went live that you wanted Michael to talk about?
Yeah, I believe our audience would love to know about the recent win a client of yours experienced named, I believe his name was Yuri Raffaelli. Can you tell us about Yuri and what gave you guys the big high five?
Well, I wish I could claim it. It was not he's not my client. It was a case that does track with what we do. And that's basically, we do a lot of not just finding unclaimed property in the state offices, but also money resulting from foreclosures, tax and mortgage foreclosures, where property, the party that is owed money, just say the county or the bank or whatever, is owed $20,000. It goes to an auction, and an auction gets $50,000. That extra $30,000, in most states, the county gives that extra $30,000 to the property owner if they can find them. Obviously, a lot of times they can't, and that's where we step in. So this Uri Raffaelli owned some property here in Michigan, and he underpaid his taxes by $9, and he never made up that money. So the county foreclosed on it because he was delinquent, and the county said, "Great, they sold it for, I don't know, $50,000, something like that." So they said, "Great." The $9 went to pay off the taxes, and they keep that other $49,000 and change. And as Mr. Raffaelli said, no, that's my money. I want that. Basically, that's equity that I got. And he took it to the Michigan Supreme Court, and the Michigan Supreme Court said he's absolutely right. It's unconstitutional to keep his money. And this is really going to open up areas for us to help people find money, because a lot of times when someone loses their home, whether to tax foreclosure, mortgage foreclosure, they think to themselves, I've lost my property, and they just walk away, not realizing sometimes there are tens of thousands of dollars or more just they're leaving on the table. And that's where we've come in. We've dealt with a case out in New York where literally it was $1 million surplus that these two guys just left behind.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's going to be, really important for people to know, especially in light of COVID. I read the Wall Street Journal the other day and they mentioned there was an article in the month of April. They recorded a large number of mortgage delinquencies, and they expect, this pandemic to make it much worse as the months go by. So people need to know that you have rights, and if you are unable to pay, your taxes, that you're not at the end. Right.
Especially with taxes, because you do have some time to make it up. And I should add, in Raffaelli's case, there was actually a nonprofit law firm that represented him all the way to the state Supreme Court. So there are those who, if you're getting kicked around, look around, because there are those who will help you pro bono.
Yeah, that's a great point. But I think it's time for speed round, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think it is. All right. A couple of things. That story is amazing. I'd love to. We don't have time today, but how that happened over a $9 issue is crazy to me. But that's for another time. All right, Michael, favorite book and why?
In terms of business, I would say we discussed before. Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yeah, great. It's great.
I read, especially as I was early in the stages of building Access International, and it really kind of shaped my thinking as to how to build a successful organization.
Yeah, I'll just mention this because this has come up on the show, and it's one of my all-time favorite books. I think it's a great book to read in this, especially in this market. Who Moved My Cheese? Just because change is here and it's going to continue to change on a consistent basis. Randy, you got a question for Michael?
A will or a trust?
That's above my pay grade. I leave that to people like you. I mean, I know that the benefits of a trust are that it keeps things out of the public purview because you don't have all the filings in court that list everything. But like I said, our job is to pick up the mess afterwards.
My question was aimed at what's easier for you to recover assets within, a will through probate or a trust where it's more private?
Well, for us, it's a will because the record's public, so we can see who gets what. And a lot of times the trust has been laid to rest, and nobody can find the trust documents. So then we have a problem of who's going to get the money, and that sometimes actually impedes the entire ability to recover money. So I always prefer I'm a big fan of public record information.
Nice. All right, last question, Michael. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Know your numbers. Go like I said, go unprepared and know what you're up against.
Yeah, that's well said. Well said. All right, tell everybody who your ideal client is and how they can get a hold of you.
So we have a few. One are large companies that have not done their own property recovery, but a lot of it will be nowadays with the new business, especially the people who have recently lost loved ones and are overwhelmed by the idea of handling probates. Or it could also be probate attorneys, funeral home directors, people who are clergy members who are counseling people who have recently lost loved ones and again are overwhelmed by the situation. They can use the help. All
right. Phone number, websites, anything you want to give out?
So I see that the website is scrolling. I see on the bottom of the screen, but you can reach 248-557-4960. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. Again, we have the new website that's launching any day now, inheritmore.com. So love to hear from you.
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking time to talk to Randy and I, Michael. I've known you for a while, but it's nice to sit down and really talk and dive deeper into your business. Continued success, and thanks for the knowledge and the wisdom that you shared today. I really appreciate it. Randy, I'll let you close it out.
And in every drama, Michael, you need a crime, a detective, and a solution.
You're a detective.
You are a great investigator, and our customers and clients are well served to work with you. So thank you for all your hard work and well wishes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here.
What's next?
All right. Thanks, guys. Michael, thank you so much.
Yeah. Have a great day, everyone.
Always fun. All right. Bye, guys.